Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be talking about a deck from 2009 called Palkia G. Palkia G got top 8 at the World Championships in 2009. Diego Cassiraga, the 2017 World Champion, actually got that top 8 finish. And it had 4 other placements in the top 16, so definitely a really strong archetype. But let's go right into it. So starting off with 3 Palkia G. Palkia G has got 100 HP, 2 retreat, and a weakness to lightning times 2. The first attack is Splashing Turn, so for water and a colorless it does 20, and then you can switch Palkia G with one of your benched Pokemon. And then the second attack, the Splashing Turn's alright, but Pearl Breath is definitely the one you use a lot more of. So for a water and 2 colorless, you do 50, and then it does 10 spread to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it can definitely add up over time, especially in this format. There's a lot of decks that love to fill their bench up, so being able to punish that with Pearl Breath is really great, and it just helps your spread overall in the late game. It's just a super powerful attack for sure. And then you play one of the level X as well. So the level X is great. It's got 120 HP, 2 retreat, and a weakness to lightning. So the Poké power is called Lost Cyclone. It's a really strong power. So essentially, you can activate Lost Cyclone whenever you want during your turn, once during your turn. And then both players, both you and your opponent, have to pick, if you have 4 or more bench Pokemon, you have to pick 3 of them and then Lost Zone the rest and all cards attached. So again, it's great because you don't really care about that. Like the deck is built so that you can Lost Cyclone your benched, and it actually kind of benefits you because you get to open up those bench slots. While alternatively, when you're against an evolution deck, them having to Lost Zone their Pokemon, usually they're setting up evolutions, whether that's Claydolls or their stage 2s, and they usually want to keep those Pokemon. So being able to disrupt your opponent's board is really, really solid in this format. And I think that's one of the reasons this deck is like such a top tier deck, is because Lost Cyclone is such a strong disruption power. And then the attack on Palkia G Lv.X is also really good. So for 2 waters and 2 colorless, you discard 2 energy attached to Palkia G, and then you can choose one of your opponent's Pokemon, and it does 80 damage to that Pokemon. So that's really convenient because Claydol, one of the best support Pokemon that's ever been printed, has exactly 80 HP. So this deck thrives off Claydol decks because you can just one-shot the consistency, and then Pearl Breath to spread the entire board after that. So definitely a really, really solid attack as well. Just the Palkia G Lv.X is a great card. And you play 4 Mesprit as well. Mesprit's a pretty key part of this deck, and it fits in with the, what's it called? Lost Cyclone. Fits in with Lost Cyclone pretty well. So Mesprit's got 70 HP, a single retreat, and 20 plus 20 weakness to Psychic. Psychic Bind is the power. So when you bench Mesprit from your hand, your opponent is locked on Poké powers for the next turn. So they can't use Uxie, they can't use Claydol, they can't use any power, and it's just such a strong ability. And a lot of decks in this format would like to play this card. It's a really powerful card, but bench space is it's really tight in this format. But that's where Lost Cyclone comes in, is because you can just Mesprit, Uxie, Azelf, do whatever you need to do, Lost Zone your Mesprit once it's been used, and then just bench another one. And that's why you play 4-2. It's really good to have in your opening hand because you get to Psychic Bind before your opponent even gets to use their Uxies. So definitely a very, very powerful card. And you do play 2 Psychic Energy, so we are going to talk about the attack. So for 2 Psychic, extra Sensory does 20 plus. If you have the same amount of cards in your hand as your opponent, it does 50 more, so it does 70. Definitely a decent damage attack for 2. Good to know that you have. And then you play 3 Uxie as well. So Uxie's got 70 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. The Poké power is called Setup. Really strong power. So when you bench Uxie from your hand, you get to draw until you have 7 cards in your hand. So again, it's one of those sprites that is great to the power. You really want to utilize it, but once it's done, you don't really have a use for it on your bench. So Lost Cyclone is just able to Lost Zone that and then open it up for, potentially more Uxies or whatever else you need at that point in the game. Psychic Restore is kind of cool as well. So for 1 colorless, it does 20, and then you can put Uxie and all cards attached to it to the bottom of your deck in any order. That can be good against Gengar, Feigning Spell Gengar, because you mitigate that Feigning Spell because you go to the bottom of your deck. So good to know that you have that attack as well. Definitely good in certain situations. And the level X is really important as well. So Uxie Lv.X has got 90 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. So Trade-Off is a great consistency power. So Trade-Off, once during your turn, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, pick one of them, put it in your hand, pick the other one and put it at the bottom of your deck. So just great consistency throughout a game. And then it's also got a really good attack. So for 2 colorless, it does 60, and then it can't use Zenblade during your next turn. But this is actually a very important attack versus Machamp. If anyone's playing Machamp, Machamp is a really powerful counter to SP decks because for 1 fighting, it has an attack called Takeout, and Takeout can just essentially knock out any basic Pokemon. If if it's in the active. So really, really powerful. And you have to have an answer to that in either Unown G, which you play, and we're going to talk about in a sec, or you can just return KO. And with a Lucario, so Lucario GL makes every weakness in play ×2 instead. Most of your weaknesses are ×2, so you don't really care anyway. But against Machamp, it's got a +30, so changing that to a ×2 is the difference between 2-shotting it and 1-shotting it. You have 2 energy. With a Zen Blade, you do 60 ×2 is 120, and then with a Crobat drop, that's 130, and it's able to get a knockout on a Machamp. So being able to return knockout on a Machamp is definitely really important, and it's one of the biggest reasons you play Uxie Lv.X. So you also play an Azelf from Legends Awakened, so 70 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. Time Walk is the power that you play this for. So Time Walk, when you bench Azelf from your hand, you can look at your prizes for a Pokemon, reveal it to your opponent, and then put a card from your hand in place of that card in your prizes. So great to be able to see your prizes first off, but also great because you play a lot of thin Pokemon lines. Like your main attacker is a 3-1 line. So if you prize Palkia G Lv.X, that is a pretty important part of your strategy. So being able to get that at other prices is definitely very strong. And this is a staple in a lot of decks as well. So a lot of decks play Uxie and Azelf, and being able to shut that off with Mesprit is another reason that this deck is so powerful. So the Azelf also has a attack. So you do play Psychics, and we'll talk about it. So for 1 Psychic, lockup does 20. The defending Pokemon can retreat. Definitely some situations where that's useful. And then you play another Azelf as well. So this Azelf, I believe is from Majestic Dawn. It's got 60 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. So the Pokebody is called Downer Material. If you have Uxie and Mesprit on your bench, as well as this Azelf, the attacks of your opponent's basic Pokemon cost 1 colorless more. So this is technically a mirror tech, but it's also really good against Luxape. Like any SP deck relies on attacking with basic Pokemon for cheap, like Luxray GL Lv.X, let's say, for example. Really, really powerful attacker against this deck because for a Lightning and an E-Gain, you can just choose a Palkia, Bright Look it, and then destroy it for 1 energy. It's actually ridiculous. It's one of the hardest things for this deck to deal with is a Luxray GL Lv.X. But if you get this Downer Material combo into play, they're not able to just hit that single energy E-Gain combo. They have to hit 2 energy and an E-Gain if they want to get that off. So definitely a really powerful tech in the mirror as well against SP. And Bind Pulse is kind of cool too. Not the reason you play it. You definitely play it because it's good against SP Pokemon. But we'll talk about it because you do play Psychic. So Bind Pulse for 1 Psychic does 10 damage. And then during your opponent's next turn, your opponent can't attach any special energy cards from his or her hand to any of his or her Pokemon. So there's not a ton of decks that don't play basic energy, but Call is a pretty good card in this format. And Porygon Z is a deck that plays a ton of special energy. So that attack could be useful in that matchup potentially. Okay, so you play 2 Unown G as well. So Unown G is a really cool card. It's kind of interesting to explain, so I'll explain it with this Mesprit. So let's say we have a Mesprit active and an Unown G. Okay, so this Unown is in my hand. I can bench it as a Pokemon and then activate Guard as a power. So if I activate Guard, Unown G isn't a Pokemon anymore. It becomes a Pokemon tool. So I'm going to put it on the Mesprit. Okay, now it's a Pokemon tool. And now Mesprit can't be affected by any effects of attacks. So let's say, for example, that Machamp that we were talking about earlier. Mesprit's a basic Pokemon, so for 1 fighting, he would get knocked out if he was getting taked out by a Machamp. However, because Unown G is attached, it stops all effects of attack. So takeout is one of the biggest effects that you stop. So it is a good counter against Machamp. It also has some uses against Flygon. Flygon Memory Berry especially has some really good attacks that it can use that lock you active, and being able to not get dragged up or whatever is really good with Unown G. Another good use for Unown G is against Gengar. Gengar's Shadow Room is also an effect of an attack. It's dropping damage counters. It's not doing damage. So being able to, put an Unown G on your Uxie instead of getting 2-shot by Shadow Room and you lose your Pokemon consistency, you just keep it and then you get to trade off for the rest of the game if you want to. So Unown G is definitely a really powerful card. And the attack is also really good on Unown G. So there's a lot of donk potential with this attack, and you do play Psychic Energy too. So for 1 Psychic and a Colorless, it does 50. If it has any damage counters on it, the damage is 10 instead. But there's a ton of Pokemon that have 50 HP in this format. Like Unown G is one of those Pokemon, and a lot of decks play Unown G. But also, there are a lot of Stage 2 Pokemon that's basics have a 50 HP Pokemon, like Trapinch has 50 HP, Baltoy, so many almost every stage 2 deck, I think every stage 2 in the deck in the format plays Claydol, and Baltoy has 50 HP as well. So if you have an attach, let's say attached like a Palkia turn 1, being able to know that you have that option to switch with a Bronzong, move the energy, attach a Psychic, and then just win the game if your opponent draw passes with a 50 HP Pokemon. It's a really good option to know that you have, and this is actually one of the attacks that's, I've almost got donked by this attack before. I benched another Pokemon at the beginning of the game because I was like, I don't want to get donked by this. But yeah, definitely a strong attack in the right situation. You do play a Mismagius line as well. So it's a pretty direct tech against another Pokemon. But the tech is really important because the reason you tech is because Mewtwo level X is an auto loss if you don't. But we'll get into that when we talk about the Mismagius. So Misdreavus got 60 HP, a single retreat, resistance to colorless and a weakness to dark. Lullaby for free. The defending Pokemon's now asleep, so kind of cool. You can just retreat into it, and then if you're really afraid your opponent's going to knock you out, you can just put it to sleep in a certain situation. And then Nightmare Feast for 1 Psychic. If the defending Pokemon is asleep, this attack does 50 damage and remove 5 damage counters from Misdreavus. If the defending Pokemon is not asleep, this attack does nothing. So kind of mediocre, but not the reason you play it. You do play it for the Mismagius though. So Mismagius got 80 HP, a single retreat, resistance to colorless, and a weakness to dark. So the first attack for free as well does 20 times the amount, or so choose up to 4 in any combination of Pokemon tool cards and technical machine cards in play. So Unown G becomes a Pokemon tool card, so you can discard it with this attack. And then you also play another Pokemon tool that we're talking about in a sec. But yeah, so 20 times up to 4, so you can do 80 for free if you discard 4 Pokemon tools. And the reason that you play this card is for this card, which is Mewtwo level X. So Mewtwo level X has got 120 HP. And it's ×2 weak to Psychic. So if you discard 3 tools, you're doing 60 ×2 is a knockout, and it's an evolution Pokemon. And the reason that Mewtwo is like such a threat is because of Psy Barrier. So Psy Barrier says prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to Mewtwo level X from your opponent's basic Pokemon. That's all you play in this deck is just basic Pokemon. The level X on the Palkia, even though technically, you know, you have to quote unquote evolve it, it's still a basic Pokemon. So Mewtwo stops it, and you really can't afford to just lose to a Mewtwo level X because Flygon Memory Berry plays it, and a ton of decks in the format can just tech a Mewtwo. So being able to just play the 1/1 Mismagius means you don't auto loss to that tech, and I feel like especially in this meta, SP is really good, so I think that Mewtwo's a pretty good card to include in a lot of lists, and that's why you play Mismagius, is because you can't just auto lose to Mewtwo. That's just not an option. But Mismagius also has another attack that's kind of cool. So for a Psychic and a Colorless, it does 40. If your opponent has 4 more bench Pokemon, choose one of them and return that Pokemon, all cards attached to it, to your opponent's hand. So really niche situation that you use this attack, but there are some situations where, like, if your opponent has like one big attacker left that they're going to try to sweep your board with, but they're loading it with energy on the bench, and they have like 4 Pokemon, you can just use this attack and then bring it and all cards, like let's say like a Flygon level X, you can just bring it and all cards attached to the hand. So if you got rare candy, they have to have another candy, and then that Flygon level X still isn't going to be able to get out for another turn, and all of the attaches that they're building on that just got deleted. So you essentially get to delete a couple of their turns, and that's a really good attack in certain situations for sure. So talking about some of the SP Pokemon now that aren't Palkia. So Crobat G is one of the really good SP Pokemon that you play. It's got 80 HP, free retreat, a resistance to Psychic, and a weakness to Lightning. So Flash Bite is the power. When you bench Crobat, you get to drop 1 damage on your opponent's board somewhere. So this is great because Pearl Breath already spreads a bunch of single damage drops, and being able to take a knockout with a Flash Bite definitely happens sometimes. Or like, let's say, so Palkia G does a 80 snipe. Uxie Lv.X is a pretty common card in the format. It's a really good card. You don't kill it, and it's a good consistency card too. But if you Flash Bite it first, you put it down to 80, and then you kill it. So it just helps you hit those numbers that you need. And with Poke Turn, you can hit multiple Flash Bites and get like essentially plus powers in a turn. So definitely a solid power for sure. And then the attack, you play Psychic Energy, so you can attack with it as well. So for a Psychic in the colors Toxic Fang, the defending Pokemon's now poison, put 2 damage instead of 1 on the defending Pokemon between turns. Being able to poison your opponent's active can be really good, depending on if they're using a power that's really important. In this format, if you have a special condition on you in the active, you cannot activate Pokemon powers on a Pokemon. So definitely good to know that that's an option that you have versus some decks. You do play Bronzong G as well. So Bronzong G's got 90 HP, 3 retreat. This is so whack. The resistance and weakness. Resistance to fire, because Bronzong, the steel type, is resistant to fire. And then Bronzong, the steel psychic type, is also weak to psychic, even though it's 0.25 resistant. Like it does a quarter damage, but I guess we're just weak to psychic. This card tilts me every time I read it. Anyway, the power is called Galactic Switch. So once during your turn, you can move an energy card attached to one of your Pokemon SP to another one of your Pokemon. So that's great because you can get a surprise Uxie Lv.X out of nowhere. You have no attaches to it, move one and then attach, and then all of a sudden you're Zen blading out of nowhere. And it's just good to be able to move your energy around. You never know, especially with Poke Turn. Like you could be attacking with something, take a hit, and if you're going to Poke Turn to heal it, you want to move that energy off so that you're not just wasting your attaches, and it just makes your energy attaches much more efficient for sure. So you play Lucario GL as well. So Lucario GL's got 80 HP, single retreat, and a weakness to psychic. So the Pokebuddy is called Boundary Aura, and essentially what Boundary Aura says is every weakness is applied as ×2 instead of whatever the weakness is, +20, +10, +30. It's all ×2. So that's great in a few matchups for sure. Really important versus Gyarados. You play a lightning tech that we're going to talk about in a second. And if you're not able to hit Gyarados for ×2 weakness, it's much too high HP. So being able to hit it for lightning weakness is great. Being able to hit Kingdra for lightning weakness as well. It's got a +30 lightning weakness, but being able to hit it for ×2 means that you're much more likely to be able to get that one shot that you need. And there's some other niche uses as well. Oh, like I was saying, like the Uxie Lv.X and Machamp. There's just like a lot of situations where making your opponent's weakness ×2 means you might knock it out. So definitely important in some matchups for sure. Speaking of important some matchups, Raichu GL, 80 HP, a single retreat, a resistance to metal, and a weakness to fighting. So this is mainly a mirror tech. You play this card because if you've Pearl Breathed once and your opponent has like 3 bench Pokemon, you can kill an opposing Palkia G Lv.X for 1 lightning and an E gain. And it's a basic Pokemon, so you can just search it with an SP. You can get it all in one turn, so definitely a really powerful attacker against Palkia G Lv.X. But again, it's also good against Kingdra and Gyarados, really anything that's lightning weak. It's good to have a lightning attacker because there are some really good water Pokemon in this meta. So the first attack, Thunder Throw for 1 colorless. Choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This attack does 10 damage to each of them. So definitely some good early game snipe, and you're also able to get that for free. So for 1 colorless, you put an energy gain on there, and then it's attacking for free. But the main attack that you have it for is Repeat Lightning. So for 1 lightning and a colorless, it does 30 plus 10 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So again, a ton of synergy with Pearl Breath. If you get 1 Pearl Breath off, then all of a sudden Raichu's swinging for a lot of damage. And again, it's a lightning tech for those water type attackers that are really good in this meta. And then you play a fighting tech as well. So Toxicroak G, 90 HP, 2 retreat, and a weakness to psychic. Leap Away is the power, so Leap Away is actually pretty good. So once on your turn, if Toxicroak G is your active Pokemon, you can flip a coin. If heads, return Toxicroak G and all cards attached to it to your hand. And then, you just get to return all the cards. So usually what happens is you have an energy gain and a psychic, and it's a counter to Luxray GL Lv.X. So Luxray, like I was saying, Luxray's a pretty big problem for this deck. It one-shots you for like 1 to 2 to like almost no energy, and being able to get a return knockout with 1 energy is really important. So Poison Revenge does that. So for 1 psychic and an E gain, it does 20 plus 40 if one of your Pokemon got knocked out from damage from one of your opponent's attacks last turn. And then your opponent's active is now poisonous as well. So great attack, and you just one-shot a Lucario. You're able to do 130 to anything that's fighting weak if you have a Lucario GL in play. But yeah, just a really, really good counter to Luxray, and you definitely need that counter if you're trying to beat Luxape. So getting into the trainers now, starting off with 4 Poke Turn. Poke Turn is a great card. It's got so many uses. So Poke Turn, it says return one of your Pokemon SP and all cards attached to your hand. So this has got a lot of uses. Let's say you're attacking with a Palkia, for example. You got 2 energy and an energy gain. So you're using Pearl Breath. You Pearl Breath a couple times and you get hit. And then you want to heal because you really don't want that Palkia to just die. So what you can do is Bronzong one of the energy off of Palkia, move it to another Palkia, Poke Turn the Palkia, and then put the other Palkia that you moved the energy to up. And since you have that energy in your hand that you just got back from the Poke Turn, because you get all cards attached back to your hand, you can just attach it and the E gain to a fresh Palkia, and then all of a sudden you're attacking with a healed Palkia out of nowhere. So definitely a really, really powerful card. There's a ton of uses for this card. That's only one of them. You're also able to use multiple bat drops in a turn if you need to get like double Flashbite off. A cool use is getting a double Galactic Switch off. Being able to switch 2 energy can be a big deal depending on what your board is. But you can Galactic Switch, Pokemon turn, bring it back to your hand, and then bench it again. And since your hand is private knowledge, your opponent doesn't know whether that's a new Bronzong G or the same one. Obviously, every list only plays one, but that's just not how the game works. So you can bench it again and then use that power again. So definitely a really, really powerful card. You also play 4 Energy Gain. So Energy Gain is a great card as well. It can only be attached to Pokemon SP, but as long as it's attached to one of your SP Pokemon, the attacks of that Pokemon cost 1 colorless less. So it lets you Hydro Shot for 2 water and a colorless energy instead of 2 water and 2 colorless energy. It lets you Poison Revenge for 1. It lets you Repeat Lightning for 1. It lets you Toxic Fang for 1 instead of 2. Like, it just makes your attacks so much more efficient because you can get single energy or double energy attackers in a single turn. Definitely a really, really powerful card as well. So you play 3 Power Spray. Power Lock is kind of the name of the game with this deck. You play 4 Mesprit because it's such a big deal. And you play 3 Power Spray as well. That's 7 cards of the deck that are just dedicated to stopping your opponent from having powers. That's more than 1/10 of the deck that's dedicated to that. So yeah, essentially Power Spray, if you have 3 or more Pokemon SP in play during your opponent's turn, if they try to activate a power, you can use Power Spray during your opponent's turn, and then that power it's nullified. It doesn't happen. So definitely a really, really solid card, and locking your opponent's powers is, again, the name of the game. So it's a great card in this deck. It's a super good fit. You need to play 2 SP Radar as well, so it's a good Pokemon search for Pokemon SP. Choose a card from your hand, put it on top of your deck, and then search your deck for a Pokemon SP, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So that's great for finding your Palkia G Lv.X. You have a lot of stuff that finds basic Pokemon, Call, Roseanne's, whatever, but finding the level X can be a little bit tricky, and you can search this card with Cyrus Conspiracy, which we're going to talk about in a second. So SP Radar is a great card in this deck. You do play 1 Night Maintenance as well. Hydro Shot does discard water energy, and your Psychic and Lightning lines are pretty thin. So if you need to use Toxicroak or Raichu twice in a game, being able to shuffle it and the energy required back into the deck just means that you have that attacking option again. And that, again, depending on the matchup, it can be really important to have your tech attackers. You play 1 Luxury Ball as well. So Luxury Ball, search your deck for any Pokemon, put it in your hand, excluding level X. So the only thing that doesn't get is Palkia or Uxie, but it gets any other card, finds Mesprit, finds an Uxie turn 1, finds literally anything. Such a good card as a 1-of. The flaw in it is if you have one in your discard, you can't play another one. But yeah, still a really good 1-of for sure. So getting into the supporters now, we're going to talk about Cyrus Conspiracy. So you play 4 Cyrus Conspiracy. Cyrus Conspiracy says you can search your deck for a supporter card, a basic energy card, and a trainer card that has Team Galactic's invention in its name. So that grabs you any 4 of these guys, Poketurn, Energy Gain, Power Spray, or SP Radar, as well as a basic energy and a supporter for next turn. So such a good card. That's why you play 4. But yeah, just staple in like every SP deck. It's such a good card. You play 3 Roseanne's Research as well. So Roseanne's also helps you find those basic energy that you need to find, as well as basic Pokemon. So Roseanne says, search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon and basic energy cards, show them to your opponent, and then put them into your hand and shuffle your deck afterward. So again, it's just a good Pokemon search. And when you play thin Psychic and Lightning lines, the only reason that you're able to do that is because you play so much basic energy search. You play 8 supporters that just find you a basic energy that you want to find. And it lets you play those thin lines and those cool tech Pokemon for certain matchups. So you play 1 Bebe Search as well. Bebe Search, choose a card from your hand, put it on the top of your deck, search your deck for a Pokemon, and then put it in your hand. So that's 1 of 3 cards in your deck that finds your level X's. So Bebe Search is actually the only card that finds Uxie Lv.X, but SP Radar and Bebe Search both find Palkia, and finding that Palkia on the right turn is pretty important. If you're not able to get it out early enough, your opponent can definitely just have a massive 5 bench board and then overrun you, but getting that Palkia out is really important, and Bebe Search just helps you find that Palkia. So you also play 1 Aaron's Collection. So Aaron's Collection, search your discard for up to 2 in any combination of Pokemon SP and basic energy cards, show them to your opponent and put it in your hand. So again, the same as Night Maintenance, like you have very thin lines, like your Palkia G is a 3-1, and like Mismagius is a 3-1. So you have to be able to recover those. And Aaron's is a great SP recovery because you can just put it back to your hand. So if you need to get the Palkia G Lv.X back and a water, you can just get those back. And it's also searchable by Cyrus, so you can get it the turn. Well, you can search it with a Cyrus one turn and then use it the next turn, which is kind of a nice part about playing an Aaron's as well. Getting into the energy now, you play 4 Call energy. Call is great because it helps you find your basic Pokemon. So there's a couple ways you can use Call in this deck. So if you have it attached to your active Pokemon, you can activate Call, and then you can search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, put them onto your bench, and then your turn ends. But that can be really good because it helps you hit your Azelf combo, like the downer material combo. So let's say you hit a Mesprit or an Uxie or an Azelf, let's say turn 1. It has to be this Azelf though. And you want to stop your opponent. Like let's say you're going second against a Luxape and they got an energy on their Luxray and you really do not want them to hit the Palkia that you have on the bench. So you attach a call to the active. You call for, let's say you used a Mesprit this turn too, so that's great. They can't Bright Look you, so you used a Mesprit, you power lock them. Now you call for a Uxie and an Azelf downer material, and now you have your full Azelf combo in play, and you're slowing your opponent down until you get to that point where you're ready to attack, and just slowing them down that 1 or 2 turns can be the difference between staying in the game and not being able to stay in the game. But it's also great for, you can find your tech Pokemon as well. Like same situation, if you know your opponent like has got a Luxray in their hand because they Cyrus for a Bebe's or whatever, you can call for a Toxicroak and then have the return knockout on that Luxray if that's a threat that you're afraid of. So you play 5 basic water as well. Palkia is your main attacker and you need water to attack with it. You also discard water energy, so it's good to have 5. And like with recovery, like 5 in Aaron's collection and a night maintenance is pretty good for water for sure. You do play 2 psychic. Toxicroak G is an important tech, but there's also some niche situations for other attackers, like I was saying with Mesprit or Azelf or Crobat, for example, and that's why you play 2. And then the 1 lightning, again, it's just for the Raichu. Raichu is your lightning tech, and you play 1 just because Roseanne's and Cyrus can search for it, so you don't need to play a ton so that you're consistent, because you can just find it whenever you'd like. But yeah, this has been Palkia Lock. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.